Okay, so we've been looking at this type of self, which has those three characteristics of permanent, unitary, and independent of causes and conditions, and exploring whether such a self can exist or not. It's good to keep thinking about that, keep exploring that. Don't just immediately think, oh yeah, that's impossible, that's nothing could exist that way. It's good to keep checking that out, becoming really convinced of it. So, all the Buddhist schools agree, this is one thing they all agree on, that such a self doesn't exist. That's unanimous in Buddhism. Now, there's another kind of self, which is, from the Buddhist point of view, a wrong sense of self, a false sense of self. This is number 5 on the list, page 2. And this is called a self-sufficient, substantially existent self. So those terms are a bit, probably don't make a lot of sense to you. So I'll explain them. Now, this is also agreed upon by all the Buddhists. So all the different Buddhist schools are in agreement that there's no such thing as a self-sufficient, substantially existent self. But what is that? What does it mean to be self-sufficient, substantially existent? I don't know why they come up with these terms. I have to say, why did they make simple terms? But anyway, there must be a reason for it. So first let's just describe what this kind of self looks like. If it did exist, if such a self did exist, what would it look like? How would it appear? So it is said that unlike the previous one, the permanent, unitary, independent self, so that seems to be something separate from our body and mind, as if it could exist on its own, outside of our body and mind. And this is what the non-Buddhists actually believe, because they think it continues to exist even after our body and mind die. That self goes on. But this one here, the self-sufficient, substantially existent self, doesn't appear like that. It doesn't appear to be something completely separate from our body and mind. It appears to be something within our body and mind, like part of our body and mind. But still slightly separate. And they use the analogy of a boss. Like, I know the traditional analogy is like if you have a group of salespeople, like a real estate office. Let's say there's a real estate office, and there's 10 people working in this real estate office. They're all real estate agents. They're all selling real estate. But one of them is kind of the boss. Right? He's the one in charge, or she. She's the boss. So she is also a real estate agent. She's not like a totally different kind of person. She also works as a real estate agent. So in one way they're all the same, but she's still more the boss. She's the one who tells the others what to do. So they say this I appears like that. It appears to be something within the body and the mind, within our aggregates. The traditional Buddhist explanation of what makes us up is 5 aggregates. Does anyone know what the 5 aggregates are?
Yes, this
it's on
is
the
here,
paper.
yeah.
You can cheat. Yeah, so on the first page, 2/3 down, the 5 aggregates are form. So the form aggregate just refers to our body. So all the physical parts of us. That's included in the form aggregate. And then feelings. So the rest of the aggregates, the second through the fifth, are all mental. These are all different aspects of our mind. So feelings specifically refers to, there's just three types of feelings. When we talk about feelings, there's only three types. It's pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, or in between. And so, according to Buddhism, feelings, this is a mental factor, one of the mental factors. And it's an ever-present mental factor, which means that every moment, with every experience we have, there's always a feeling. There's always a feeling involved. And it's either a pleasant feeling, or it's an unpleasant feeling, or it's neutral feeling. So everything we look at, everything we hear, everything we smell, taste, feel with our body, every thought we have, every mental state we have, there's always a feeling there. Either we feel pleasant, or we feel unpleasant, or we feel neutral. So that's the meaning of feeling. So it's an aspect of the mind. Discriminations, the third one, this is another mental factor, and it's a mental factor that is able to differentiate one thing from another. You know, like colors, for example. We look at colors and we can say that's blue, and that's red, and that's green, and that's gray, and that's, you know. So it's the mental factor of discrimination that can differentiate or discriminate one thing from another, whether it's colors, shapes, sounds. I mean, it's a very important mental factor because it's also needed to be able to discriminate what's true and what's false, what's right and what's wrong. All of that involves also some wisdom. But anyway, it's an important mental factor. Then the fourth aggregate is compositional factors. So this is like a big bag of leftovers. It said that whatever aggregate, whatever part of us doesn't fit into the other the other aggregates is in the fourth one. So all the other mental factors, we have many, many mental factors, and also included in that are some, yeah, never mind, let's just say lots of other mental factors. So like all our emotions, anger and jealousy, both our negative emotions and also the positive emotions, love and compassion. So they are all in that fourth aggregate.
Sorry, what about the feeling aggregate? Are the feelings not in there?
No, because that's number 2.
Yeah.
What's the difference between emotion and feeling then?
Sorry. Yeah, there's a difference between emotions and feelings. So again, it's translating a Sanskrit term or a Tibetan term into English. So they came up with this term feeling, okay, to describe this mental factor, which consists of 3 emotions, or not emotions, sorry, forget that. 3 feelings: pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feeling.
Like enjoyment.
It's just a very basic thing. Like, let's say you like the color red.
Yeah.
Okay, if you like the color red, then whenever you see red color, there's a pleasant feeling with it. If you hate the color gray, whenever you see gray, there will be an unpleasant feeling. So it's just like a very basic reaction, response. It's before emotion. Let me carry on. It's before we get into emotions, okay? So let's say you don't like gray, so you see a gray object, you feel an unpleasant feeling. Then if it grows, it can turn into hatred, aversion. You start to feel disgust. Okay, so that's beyond feeling. That gets into hatred, the mental factor of hatred, which is one of the delusions. So actually they say unpleasant feelings usually lead to hatred or anger. Pleasant feelings usually lead to attachment, grasping. Yeah? I want that. So it starts off as a pleasant feeling, and then it turns into attachment, clinging, grasping. It doesn't have to. But this is what normally happens with ordinary beings who have no control over themselves. You see something pleasant and I want it. Yeah, I mean, Buddhists have pleasant feelings too. Buddhists have pleasant feelings, but they don't get into grasping and attachment. So, yeah. So there's a difference between feeling and emotion. So feeling is kind of more basic, and it's only those three shades of pleasant and neutral. Whereas emotions, like negative emotions, can be much more varied. There's hatred, there's aggression, there's violence or harmfulness. You know, it becomes stronger and also more varied. So all those emotions, like hatred and greed and jealousy and so forth, those are other mental factors, and they are included in the fourth aggregate. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Yeah. So I know it's a little confusing because often, like in English, and I'm sure in other European languages, we talk about feelings. I feel angry. I feel jealous. Okay? But here, in this context, the term feeling is a little different than those kind of emotions. Does that make sense? The fifth aggregate is consciousness, and this includes our 6 consciousnesses. So we have a consciousness for each of our 6 senses: seeing, hearing, smell, taste, touch, our body consciousness, and then mental consciousness. So this doesn't mean we have 6 different minds. Okay, it doesn't mean that. Basically we have one mind, but it can manifest in these 6 different ways. So when we're involved in seeing an object, then visual consciousness, eye consciousness comes up. When there's sounds, ear consciousness comes up. When there's something in our body, stomach ache or headache, then it's body consciousness coming up. When we're thinking or remembering something or fantasizing, then that's mental consciousness. It's like our consciousness can manifest in these 6 different ways, take 6 different forms. So this is the Buddhist way, the Buddha's way, I should say. This goes back to the Buddha. His way of describing a person. What is a person? And then actually number 2, if you see, just above where it says the 5 aggregates, it says the definition of a person. The definition of a person, what is a person? A person is an I, which is imputed in dependence on 4 or 5 aggregates. Why does it say 4 or 5?
You have no body.
Huh?
Maybe for beings, if you die and you lose your body, you can maybe have a feeling of I anyway.
What were you going to say?
Yeah, without the form.
Yeah. Yeah, there are beings who don't have the form aggregate. It's not those who have died, but there's a particular realm. There's a realm called the formless realm. And it's not easy to be born in the formless realm. You have to develop calm abiding and then develop really, really powerful concentration and then go through a lot of activity, mental activity. Anyway, you can then be born in what's called the formless realm, where you don't have a physical body. You only have the other 4 aggregates. And it's a state of, it's actually like a meditative state. You're in a meditative state your entire life, experiencing bliss without a body. It's a very blissful state, but it's still samsara. You're still in samsara. You haven't gotten out of samsara. So you stay there for a long time. Your karma runs out, you die, and then you might be born back in some other place. So it's not a state of liberation. So that's why they say 4 or 5 aggregates, because those are beings, those are persons. They're in the formless realm, but they don't have the form aggregate. They only have the other 4. So a person then is, you have to have at least 4 or 5 aggregates, a set a combination of 4 or 5 aggregates, and we call that a person. Or in the case of ourselves, we say I. So that's what a person is. A person is what is imputed in relation to or in dependence on 4 or 5 aggregates. Usually 5. So let's go back. Okay, so we're talking about this type of self which appears to be somehow within the aggregates, not like outside or separate from the aggregates, somehow in the aggregates, among the aggregates, but a little bit separate in the sense of being like a boss or a king or a ruler or the one in charge. And you might have noticed that. You might have gotten a glimpse of this, like there's an I inside who's running the show, you know, like controlling the body, deciding, okay, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go and get a cup of coffee, and then moves the body to go and do that thing. Or decides, now I'm going to meditate, so I'm going to sit like this, and I'm going to concentrate on my breath, and so on. So there seems to be something in there that's in charge, that's controlling, that's, you know,
like a will, like a will or something.
I don't know what the
will
will is. But it's a feeling of an I, okay? It's like an I. I am here, and I'm doing this, and I am controlling everything. So that's how this I appears. And, yeah, so the analogy is like this head salesperson in charge of a group of salespersons. And so it's not, it doesn't appear to be something completely separate, completely outside, completely, you know, like you could put the aggregates on one side and have the I on the other side. It doesn't seem like that, but it's within. And this particular, so according to Buddhism, such a self, such an I, in fact, doesn't exist. It's another fabrication of the mind, a creation of the mind, dreamed up by the mind, but in reality it doesn't exist. But there is a conception of this I. That exists. The conception, the mental state that believes in such an I, that experiences such an I. So that exists, just like a dream. I mean, a dream exists. When we fall asleep and have a dream, so our mind is dreaming. There is this mental state of dreaming. That exists, okay? The dream state, the dream mind exists, but the object of the dream mind, the elephant in your room, or the billion-dollar mansion that you just won in the lottery, that doesn't exist, unfortunately. So whatever it is we dream about, the content of the dream, the object of the dream, those things don't exist. But still, the mind is dreaming. There is that mind that's dreaming, right? So that does exist. That's true. That's real. So in a similar way, within our mind, we have a conception, a mental state that believes in this kind of I, a self-sufficient, substantially existent I. That exists. The mind exists, but the object of that mind, that kind of I, that kind of self, that doesn't exist. That's like the dream elephant or the billion-dollar mansion. So it is said that this kind of conception, the conception of a self-sufficient, substantially existent I, is innate, meaning that everybody has it. It's inborn. We're born with it. Even animals have it. Even babies have it. It isn't necessary to learn this from anybody else. We don't have to be taught this kind of conception. It's inborn. We have it. So that means we all have a conception of an I that exists like a boss, in control of our body and mind, in control of our aggregates. Do you believe that?
Yes.
And actually, it is said that this conception, the conception of a self-sufficient, substantially existent I, is based on or derived from the deeper conception of an inherently existent I. So that's the deeper one. That's the more root, that's the root one. The one I was talking about last night. The conception of an inherently existent, independently existent I. So that is right down at the very bottom, the very root of our experience. And then on top of that, sort of built on top of that, is this conception of a self-sufficient, substantially existent I. So we actually have to go through this one to get to the deeper one. We can't just go immediately to that one if we haven't first worked on this one. So this one exists in all of us. It's innate, but it's also possible that it could be reinforced by studying certain philosophy or religion that teaches that we do have such a self. There is a self. There is a self that's in charge. So it's possible that that kind of teaching, we might have access to such a teaching and believe in it and think, yes, it's true. So then our instinctive, intuitive, innate conception of such a self gets reinforced, gets further supported by, or further strengthened by studying incorrect tenets, incorrect philosophy. So we don't have much time left. Maybe tomorrow morning, when we're a little more fresh, hopefully, we could do a meditation on this. I haven't really, in the teachings I've received, they don't talk a lot about this one. They tend to just skim over it. But it's also said that we do have to meditate on this one and recognize the incorrectness of believing in such a self before we can really understand the deeper level of selflessness, deeper level of emptiness. And it seems that one can use the same kind of reasonings, the same kind of meditations to counteract this conception as are used for meditation on the emptiness of an inherently existent self. So anyway, we'll do that. We'll do that tomorrow. We'll explore that tomorrow. Because now I'm probably tired. So, do any of you have any questions?
Yeah, I found for myself that when I start like challenging this sense of self, it's like there's a resistance there that has to do with kind of giving up free will, if you want, or volition, or it's like for me it's like if I let go of that, I also kind of let go of agency or free will. Or does it make sense what I'm saying? Something I've been encountering for myself.
So is it like you have a sense that you need that sense of
it's like some
controller in order to be assertive and
no, more like it's like it's difficult to understand or to explain, but like just taking responsibility for my actions and acting ethically, and just it's all based in volition. Mm-hmm. It's like it has to be the volition of something, someone.
Somebody has to make a decision.
Exactly, someone has to be in charge and held responsible.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I can't say that I've encountered that problem myself, but I just became aware, just kind of finding things on the internet, that there is this whole debate about free will and whether we do have free will or not. And yeah, here in the West, there are many. I don't remember now. Maybe you know better than me, but there are people who actually say that we do not have free will. There is no such thing as free will. How does it work? Can someone explain to me? I can't remember now. But it's like, it's a kind of materialistic view. It's like we are just biological. We're just this.
Yeah, it would just be
phenomena, and
it's just the effect of causes and conditions, and it could not have been otherwise.
And they actually say that it's like an illusion to think that we have a choice, that we can choose, we can decide. I'm going to stop killing, or I'm going to stop smoking cigarettes, or I'm going to meditate. That we don't really have that choice. It's an illusion, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Some people think that way. So maybe is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's something like that, you know.
A teacher explained it to me, going into a cinema complex where you have this enormous cinema where you have 12 different rooms. You buy a ticket for a certain film, you go into the complex, and you go into the film. So you do have a certain limit. But any time you can go out of that room and go into one of the other rooms. So within a certain limit, there's something called free will, but within the limit. That's how someone explained it to me.
You mean a Buddhist teacher said this?
Now I'm asking myself, was it a Buddhist teacher? I thought so, but I'm just wondering if it was a Buddhist teacher. That doesn't sound like something.
No, but I'm asking because often, like I often teach introductory type courses to Buddhism, and this question often comes up. You know, is there, because when people hear about karma, you know, they hear the teachings on karma, then that makes them question, is there free will? Or is everything determined by our karma? Yeah, and even if we think we have free will, it's really just our karma that's you know, deciding this situation. So it's kind of a difficult question. When people ask this question to lamas, I think, because I don't think they have that kind of discussion. You know, the kind of concept of free will.
You can change, you can improve your karma, sort of. By changing yourself, you could improve, but not for everything. If you kill some teacher or whatever, this kind of karma has to ripen. But all smaller things, they say, because otherwise it's not what you say, no use to change yourself. Just wait and see what happens.
Well, one Lama, Lama Lundrup, who was the abbot of Kopan Monastery, he once answered this question by saying that it depends on how much you understand karma, how much you know about karma. So the more knowledge you have, the more understanding you have about karma, the more free will you have. Because then you can decide, okay, I know that killing is bad karma, so I'm going to really make sure I don't kill. Whereas people who don't know about karma, well, they might still decide not to kill, but, you know, many people just follow their instincts. Many people and many beings, animals, they just follow their instinct to kill. It feels good. A lot of people think it feels good to go and hunt, you know, shoot deer and kill fish. It's just really nice. It's so pleasant. So they really enjoy it. Even some murderers, I've heard, you know, they really feel good when they kill, and they want to do it again and again. So in that case, there's not a whole lot of free will going on. But those of us who know about karma and accept karma, and even if we're in a situation where we might feel some strong impulse to kill, we will say, no, I'm not going to do that. No, that's just going to lead to more suffering, so I choose not to. So that was his answer. And to me that makes sense, that if we have an understanding of karma, and also the more we understand the path to enlightenment, and are able to accept that, you know, if we engage in certain practices, certain meditations, then we'll be able to transform our mind, and, you know, eventually our mind will become enlightened mind. So knowing about that, accepting that, doing that as much as we can, we're creating the causes to finally get out of samsara. So does this mean free will? Is this free will? By definition? I mean, I guess we're not totally free,
No.
because if we were totally free, we would get out of samsara today. We would be enlightened today. So we're not totally free. We're still influenced by our karma, by our the other kind of stuff, delusions and obscurations in our mind. But we do have a certain amount of freedom. Certain amount of freedom. So then your question. So if we do make that kind of choice, if we do say, I'm not going to kill, I'm not going to smoke cigarettes, I'm not going to shoot heroin anymore.
I'm trying to stop.
Can that be done? Can we make those kind of decisions even if there's no substantially existent I, the boss, the I that's a boss? I think so, because it's factors of the mind. Yeah, a combination of mental factors. Okay, I heard these teachings on karma by people I respect. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, His Holiness, the Buddha. Okay, they said these things, I respect them. I've thought about it, it makes sense to me. And so as a conclusion of this kind of mental activity, then we say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to kill anymore. So this is a mental process, a mental activity. So it doesn't require there's an I, a boss in there who's making this decision. Yeah? I mean, relatively, conventionally, there is an I who makes a decision, but it's not that kind of I. It's the merely labeled I. A merely labeled I has made that decision. So, I don't know if this makes any sense, but I mean, sometimes it's difficult to give up these old conceptions simply because of habit. It's always hard to change habits. So if we have a certain habit that we've been following for years and years and lifetimes, and of course it's not going to be easy to change that. So sometimes it's often just clinging to an old habit that's difficult to give up or difficult to change. Okay. Is there any last burning question you have to ask before we finish?
I have one. Yeah. When you introduced number 5, you went back to number 4, saying, if I understood it correctly, that the number 4, we believe that it is apart from our body and mind, separate from our body and mind, and that it would still be there when the body and mind dies. Then I thought, does the mind die? Then what are the karmic imprints that goes?
No. What I meant was that I was referring to the non-Buddhists.
Okay,
those who were trying to figure out what is it that goes from one life to the next.
Yeah.
And they came up with this idea of a self which is permanent, unitary, independent, and separate from body and mind in a sense. I mean, I don't really understand their system. How they say it's completely separate from the body and the mind, but perhaps it's the mind. When they say mind, they're talking about the mind of this life, the kind of mental experiences one has during the life, and those stop when we die. So what goes on would be this permanent unitary independent self. Now Buddhism doesn't agree with that. Buddhism says there is mind that goes on. It's a more subtle kind of mind. It's not all the experiences we have during our life, but it is some part of our mind that continues after we die, and that's actually what takes rebirth.
Yeah, okay.
But this school has a different explanation, and having not studied it, I can't really explain how they would answer that kind of question. Okay, let's stop there for today. There's a lot of positive energy that we've created today. And we spent quite a few hours focusing on this subject of emptiness. And it is said that even if we just spend a few minutes trying to understand emptiness, by listening to it, or reading about it, or thinking about it, or meditating on it, even just a few minutes creates a huge amount of merit, positive energy, and also purifies a huge amount of our negative energy accumulated from the past. So we've been spending hours working on understanding emptiness. So that means we have created a lot of positive energy and also done a lot of purification. So try to feel a sense of joy, even though it may have been tiring and maybe difficult sometimes, but try to feel this has been a good use of our time. Feel a sense of joy or rejoicing that you have spent your time in this way. And especially, we started off with a motivation. We tried to generate an altruistic motivation for being here and doing this, meaning that we thought we're doing this not just for ourselves, but for others, for other people, other beings, to be of benefit to them as much as we can. So having that altruistic motivation has made all this activity that we've done even more powerful, more beneficial. So now, to make this positive energy even more beneficial, we can dedicate it, share it mentally with others, with the wish that it will bring benefit, peace, happiness to as many other people and beings as possible, to all beings, if possible. So may it help all beings to have less suffering, physical and mental suffering. May their suffering be relieved. And more importantly, may it help them to have less of the causes of suffering in their minds, the disturbing mental states like anger and greed, jealousy, and so on, especially ignorance, seeing things in a mistaken way. And may this positive energy help others to have positive experiences. May they have happiness and peace and everything they need, everything they wish for in order to be happy and satisfied. And may it help them have all the positive states of mind that will bring even greater happiness in the future and eventually enlightenment. So may their minds be filled with love, kindness, compassion, wisdom, and all the other positive qualities. And may they become enlightened as quickly as possible. Okay, so thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening. See you tomorrow.